Hello, everyone. This is a video on frequent quizzing, and it is part of a series, Small Teaching, Big Learning, where we feature bite-sized strategies for improving HL teaching and learning. As always, let's start with the terminology. Of course, we all know what a quiz is. Typically, we think of quizzes as small, short, informal, low-stakes assessments. In this presentation, I'm going to use the word quiz in a more general way to mean assessment, informal as well as formal, short, long, low stakes, high stakes. In terms of frequent quizzing, I'm going to show you how you can use that to provide extensive practice to your students, to unlock learning for all students, to differentiate instruction, and to level the playing field in highly diverse classes, as HL classes tend to be. Frequent quizzing is a concept that shows up in James Lang's book, Small Teaching, which is the inspiration of our series. And Lang has this to say about this strategy. Frequency matters. The easiest way to implement frequent practice is through regular quizzing. That should be your default strategy. Give quizzes at least once a week and don't hesitate to give them every class. That's a very strong endorsement of this strategy. I myself give several quizzes a week in every class that I teach. I'm talking about 4 classes a semester, so it's not a light teaching load. So you might be wondering, well, how do you do that? Do you spend your life correcting quizzes? No, more on that later. For now, let's look at what frequent quizzing does in terms of supporting the principles and practices of HL teaching. Primarily, frequent quizzing helps teachers differentiate instruction, which is, of course, very important because HL learners present a wide variety of profiles. Closely related to this idea of differentiating instruction is another use of frequent quizzing, namely to address issues of fairness and access when you have a highly diverse classroom. And you want to do that while maintaining common standards for all students. The problem arises because frequently language departments will have 1 or 2 HL courses at the most. What happens when you have very few HL courses, taking this example, let's assume 1, you tend to send all your HL learners to that 1 course. So you may end up with a course like what I'm showing here, with students that are at the novice mid-level sitting in the same classroom as students at the intermediate mid-level. That's a big gap in proficiency, as well as having students at every level in between. This is a very frequent situation in HL courses for the reasons I just explained, that departments don't have that many courses. What happens then is this kind of situation is created where the student that is at the lowest level of proficiency will start out with a huge disadvantage and may in fact have no possibility or probability of getting an A or even a B in this class because things are stacked against him. On the other hand, at the other extreme, students who start out at the intermediate mid-level, the highest level of student proficiency for the class, already start out class with a big advantage over other students and can probably very easily get an A in this class. So how do you level the playing field? Well, for this, frequent quizzes can help a lot. For instructors, it gives them crucial information that will help them to respond to the needs of all learners, particularly those who are struggling. For students, it provides extensive practice and scaffolds learning a little bit at a time so that struggling students can catch up. It encourages metacognition and independent, which is exactly what we want in a differentiated classroom. And it previews summative assessment. So students have a sense of how they're going to be tested in the high stakes assessments. For programs, it provides information that over the course of time can be used to improve curriculum design. So let's think about how to do this. And I'm going to introduce the concept of quiz pyramid, which I am basing it on the concept of the exercise pyramid, which you might know involves starting out, if you're lifting weights, doing very few reps, and then moving through cycles where you increase the reps and maybe the weights, right? Adapting or taking that concept to the classroom, the HL classroom, we might conceive of starting out with low stake quizzes, following that up with medium stakes quizzes, and ending up with high stakes quizzes or exams, right? Let's see how this works in a traditional class. By a traditional class, I mean the kind of class where the professor or the teacher walks in and first teaches the material and then practices it through activities. After that happens, typically students are sent home to do homework practice. In my class, where I use this quiz pyramid, that homework practice is it takes the form of online quizzes, which are computer graded and which students can take as many times as needed. These quizzes are carefully sequenced, as I will show you, to scaffold instruction. That is step 2 in the learning process. Here's what it looks like. We start out with nasal assimilation 1. By the way, this is from my linguistics class, Introduction to Spanish Linguistics. Nasal assimilation 1. And you can see that students can have an unlimited number of tries to do these Blackboard quizzes, which I think of as homework assignments. And then they move on to nasal assimilation 2, where they also have an unlimited number of tries. There is, however, a difference between the two exercises, and you might have spotted it already. After they're done doing nasal assimilation 1, students get feedback on the wrong answer, so they can go back and quickly fix them and get a sense of what they had not understood. That is not the case. That is not what happens with nasal assimilation 2. They now have to work through the quiz to make sure that they can get their grades to where they want to by correcting the wrong answers, but they don't get feedback on what the specific wrong answers are. Together, these two quizzes or online homework assignments, which are computer graded, unlock the material for all students. What I mean by unlocking the material is that it reveals to students what the main points are, what the vocabulary or the terminology of the material that they have to do, and what they are expected to know on other assessments. With this, having done this homework assignments, students then show up for class and take an in-class quiz. When I taught this class before the pandemic, I would just ask students to take out a piece of paper and I would give them a quiz that I could grade fairly easy, that was manageable for me to grade. And this is an important consideration for every teacher to keep in mind. You need to design your quizzes. If you're going to do frequent quizzes, you need to design your quizzes in a way that you can manage the grading. I go home, I correct these quizzes, I bring them back, and then I debrief them. And after a few more classes of this, students take a test, the high stakes test. At this point, though, they're well prepared for that test. Now, during the pandemic, I taught the same class, Introduction to Spanish Linguistics, in a flip format and online and synchronous. In a flip class, as you know, a reading or a video is assigned ahead of time. Students are supposed to do this work and then show up in class ready to practice the concepts. So this is what step 2 looks in my flip class. Students would show up then having done the reading and a video, and they would take an in-class quiz. They would have 3 opportunities in class to take this quiz online. Remember, this is an online class. And I would then use the quiz to debrief the pieces of knowledge that they're supposed to have gained from the reading and the video. Let me show you what this looks like. This is what an in-class quiz looks like. You can see that that's an in-class quiz for nasal assimilation. And they get 3 attempts, and the computer records the last attempt. Now, why 3 attempts? Well, this is something that I found works really well. On the first attempt, my students are there online. I say, everybody take the quiz. You have 5 minutes to take the quiz, everybody on their own. Second attempt, I give them another 5 minutes, and then I put them in groups. And I say, you have 5 minutes to help each other figure out what you got wrong and to help each other improve your grade. Finally, I bring them back from this group work, and I said, now you have one final attempt to work on this entirely on your own. This is a very effective strategy for quizzing students in a low stakes way that involves them in collaborative exchanges, collaborative learning, and that also ensures it's a way of checking to see if students did the assigned work. I then use it to debrief, which also starts to unlock learning. That's the third step. Then that third step involves the homework assignment, then taking online quizzes after you've done the in-class quiz and that's been debriefed in class. We move to the online quizzes to be done as homework, right? And again, the same idea. And finally, students show up and take the test in class. This is what my grade book looks like. Below that arrow are the homework exercises. I've shown you a few of them. There's 1 and 2. There are many more, by the way. I couldn't fit them on the page. But there's something in the order of 40 of these in the semester. If you look above that arrow, you see that there are only 2 high stakes assessments, the midterm and the final exam. This is a big contrast. Many low stakes assessments that don't add up to that much in terms of the final grade, and only 2 high stakes assessments that count for a lot. In the middle are the medium stakes assessments, which count for more than the low stakes assessments, but not as much as the midterm and the final. You can see that there are 10 of them. A semester typically has 15 weeks, but of course, the first week of the semester, I don't give them a quiz. And then when they take the midterm, they don't get a quiz. And there are other days like that where we don't do quizzes. The result of all this quizzing is that struggling students get many opportunities to practice the material before they have to contend with high stakes testing, the exam, right? So they get to try it a lot and they get a sense of what is expected of them. This really levels the playing field. And then for those advanced learners that we think of sometimes as, taking the class for an easy A, this does not turn out to be such an easy A because they have a lot of these online assignments to complete. Now, you might be thinking, does this only work with linguistics? I don't know how I can make this work in a language class. The answer to that is no, it doesn't only work with linguistics. I have used it in my Spanish language classes, for example, to teach accentuation or to test, in this case, for knowledge of the rules of accentuation. I have also used it for vocabulary, in this particular case, to test students or to give students practice using sentence connectors, like in addition, however, in conclusion, etc. And you can also teach it for reading comprehension or content. There are examples. I have a few examples I have one example here of that, and it's an interesting one because it pertains to a tip I want to give you. When you have true and false, if you let students take a quiz as many times as possible, you shouldn't have one true and false per question. The way to do it is to put many questions together and then ask them to mark all the true ones or all the false ones. That forces them to think, right? To think through what they're checking off. If what you do is you put one true false in each separate question, they just try one. And if that doesn't work, they try the next option, the false, let's say, and they can figure it out without giving any thought to what they're actually answering. Now, how do you make frequent quizzes work for you, the instructor, and your students? You're probably thinking, oh my God, I can see how this can work for students, but for me, it's an awful lot of work. Well, you really have to think about how to manage grading. If you're doing paper quizzes, you have to think about how to write those quizzes in a way that you can very quickly check check the answers. I use computer graded quizzes. I've been doing this for many years, so I have built a bank of quizzes over time, and I have hundreds of quizzes, and I can mix them up and very quickly put together a unique quiz each semester. So I recommend that you look into that, but that you also be patient because it takes time to build this bank of quizzes. For students, what you want to think about is making quizzes relevant. Don't let it feel like busy work and don't let it be overwhelming. It has to be manageable. You have to think of it in terms of, I want unlocking learning. And if you have a flip format, checking that students did the homework that was assigned. And with that, I'm now ready to summarize this presentation. I've shown you how to use frequent quizzing to provide extensive practice, to scaffold learning, to unlock learning, to differentiate instruction, which is a principle of HL teaching, and to level the playing field in highly diverse classes, as HL classes tend to be. I recommended that you use technology to manage grading, create quizzes that the computer can grade, and to make each quiz meaningful and valuable to learners. Do not think of this as busy work. As always, we ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up and share it with others. And of course, we love to hear your comments and ideas for how to use this particular strategy of frequent quizzing or for other strategies that have worked well for you. Thank you.